Hello and welcome to PFF Wire. I'm Doug Kyed, joined as always by Brad Spielberger. Brad, how are you doing on this Wednesday afternoon?
Doing well. Hope everyone in Florida in the potential path of Hurricane Ian is doing all right and has been able to evacuate. Otherwise, though, doing well. And one of those teams in Miami headed up to Cincinnati for a big game tomorrow night.
Definitely. We will talk about that game in a little bit. But first, just wanted to say if you are watching this on YouTube, subscribe to the PFF Wire podcast on Apple or Spotify or wherever you want to listen to podcasts. If you don't want to watch us and if you would prefer to listen to us, make sure to add a review as well. But let's get into perhaps the biggest news so far this morning, and that is that Jets quarterback Zach Wilson will be returning this week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. This seemed to be the plan all along for the Jets, but Robert Saleh, the Jets head coach, did confirm it this morning. So this is definitely good news for the Jets. Joe Flacco is actually playing decently well, but obviously you want the number 2 overall pick in the 2021 NFL draft to be your quarterback and to see what you actually have in him this season.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I remember back when he got hurt, they actually the direct quote from head coach Robert Saleh was the earliest he could return is in this Pittsburgh Steelers game. So maybe he's ahead of schedule, has been progressing nicely. Had the meniscus issue, the bone bruise, went all the way out to California from New York to get it treated. You did mention Flacco was doing well in our grading and all those things before this past week against Cincinnati. Right. He had a very, very poor showing, and now his grade is a 54.5 passing grade, which is 30th out of 34 qualifying quarterbacks. And his 1.9% big-time throw rate is 27th. So as much as Wilson struggled as a rookie, maybe also they're getting it back in there because Flacco, he did, like you said, he was like kind of holding up the fort, had that comeback win against Cleveland. But I think teams kind of know what Joe Flacco is at this point.
Yeah, I think heading into week 3, his PFF grade was like kind of hovering around 80. He was actually one of the top graded quarterbacks on PFF. But yeah, that grade did tank quite a bit there against the Cincinnati Bengals. And I don't know, I mean, obviously the Jets are not one of the better teams in the NFL. The fact that they stunk it up so much against a Bengals team that was 0-2 heading into week 3 obviously doesn't paint them in a very good light. But I think that the receivers around Zach Wilson now should give him a better chance of success. This is a better chance to see what Zach Wilson can actually be this season. And we've talked about this a lot. A lot of these other quarterbacks from the 2021 NFL draft class haven't really fully lived up to the potential so far this season. Trevor Lawrence kind of being the rare case there where over the last 2 weeks he's performed much better. But we'll see how Zach Wilson now can stack up against Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones and Justin Fields. And obviously Trey Lance is hurt, Mac Jones is hurt. But we'll just kind of see how he stacks up against the rest of these guys.
Yeah, you mentioned the weapons being much better than last year. Garrett Wilson's obviously off to a very fast start. The second highest graded rookie receiver for us up in the 80s, right behind Drake London. I want to say he has 32 targets, which is the most through week 3 in the PFF era for a rookie wide receiver. They're getting him involved early and often. Also, their tight end, Tyler Conklin, is the current fantasy football TE3. Has been getting peppered with targets from Joe Flacco, has been highly productive, and CJ Uzomah has not been in there. Zach Wilson basically did not have tight ends on his roster last year. It was essentially a placeholder. Unfortunately, though, George Fant, their left tackle, now on injured reserve. Dwayne Brown can't play week 4 against Pittsburgh. So that's going to be an issue. He's going to be running for his life, I'm sure, a little bit. Thankfully, the Steelers do not have TJ Watt on the other side, though.
Yeah, they do have Alex Highsmith, so that'll be a problem. But yeah, I was going to say, weapons are better, but that offensive line situation is definitely a bit of a mess. Certainly seems like they found something in first round pick last year. Elijah Vera Tucker has been very good for them at guard. Max Mitchell has been performing relatively well as a rookie right tackle, but looks like it's probably going to be Connor McDermott starting at left tackle for the Jets moving forward here. I know that they added some pieces there at offensive line this week. We'll see how quickly those guys can get acclimated. But, I mean, this is definitely not a great situation now to be on your 4th left tackle of the season. It's only week 4. And, yeah, you've lost Mekhi Becton. You've lost Dwayne Brown, who potentially could come back next week. Now George Fant is on injured reserve as well. So, yeah, I mean, Zach Wilson might be running for his life a little bit out there.
Yeah, and he has the Steelers first, then the Packers, I want to say, in week 5. No, Miami. So a very good defense. Again, they have given up some points, but that defensive front can get after quarterbacks in a hurry. Then the Green Bay Packers, who have been a very good defense so far, and the Denver Broncos, who also have been a very, very good defense so far. The Packers, Broncos, and Steelers have all allowed the expected points added per drop back. They're all top 11 in not allowing quarterbacks to throw the football. They've been good, particularly in the air. So welcome back, Zach Wilson. Good luck to you.
You wrote a piece for PFF.com this morning. Early season trade candidates. Wanted to go through a few of these with you. Just wanted to get right off the bat out of this list that you put together. Lots of interesting players, a lot of wide receivers, running back. Who do you think would be the most likely trade candidate on this list?
Yeah, I think one that jumps out to me is Seattle Seahawks cornerback Sidney Jones, former second-round pick out of your Washington Huskies. Has that prototypical above 6 feet, big guy, long player. Had a really good stretch to end last season, which enabled the Seahawks to bring him back on a 1-year deal for about $3.5 million. They've now decided, though, to just play the young guys. They have Kobe Bryant, the rookie, Tariq Woolen, the rookie, playing a lot of snaps. Michael Jackson, a former New England Patriot, a younger guy, also getting a lot of snaps. So I just think they don't really have a place for him at this point. We've seen them move on quickly from cornerbacks. They traded Akello Witherspoon last season before the season even began, and he was a free agent addition for them. So I just think a team will come calling. We've seen some injuries at cornerback. Like I said, he's kind of that prototypical size guy, has played well recently. And I think some team, maybe a team that plays kind of that cover 3 system, will come calling eventually and get a deal done there.
Could definitely see that. And that's DBU. That's not UW. Number of cornerbacks coming out of UW over the last few years. What was the most fun fit that you put together in here? Because I definitely liked a lot of these. I like Dearness Johnson to the Los Angeles Rams. I like the idea of Kendrick Bourne on the Chicago Bears. Not sure if that's going to happen there. That might be your wishful thinking. Myles Gaskin to the Saints. What was your favorite one to put together?
Well, it's unfortunate to hear. The Bears need somebody. And it sounds like they are in the market. CBS Sports' Jonathan Jones said they are, going to be aggressive in that market. I think my favorite fit, though, actually still with the Bears, but a guy leaving the Bears. We talked about tackle injuries. I think we probably talked about it every week so far this season. Is maybe the most injured position in the NFL is tackle. The Bears signed Riley Reif, longtime veteran tackle, played with the Bengals last year at right tackle. Previously was a left tackle for the Minnesota Vikings. He's a model of consistency, basically grades between 65 and 75 every single season, whether at left or right tackle. And they've just also decided to go with the youth movement, play some young guys, play a rookie in Braxton Jones at left tackle, who I think has been solid, and Larry Bourne at right tackle, who last couple of years now has been okay as a right tackle. Sure, they'd like to have depth. You understand, Justin Fields has enough to deal with that if they did sustain an injury there and not have Riley Reif as their swing tackle, it's a bad situation. But hypothetically, they take that risk. And I sent him to the Los Angeles Chargers. We talked about Rashawn Slater is one of the best young tackles in the NFL. They're now without him for the remainder of the season with the torn biceps. And that depth at tackle for them is bad news bears. So I think Riley Reif makes a lot of sense.
I think that Rashawn Slater injury is one that falls under the radar a little bit, but I mean, that can be a season killer for a team. I know that everyone knows how important left tackles are, but it seems like everyone knows until they actually get hurt, because it's not huge news. If one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL was out for the season, we'd still be talking about it. And that really is the importance of Rashawn Slater there in Los Angeles with the Chargers. And certainly didn't want to rain on your parade with Kendrick Bourne. It's possible. It's certainly possible. I mean, Kendrick Bourne is not playing a lot of snaps right now. He's even this week when Jacoby Myers was out in week 3 against the Baltimore Ravens, he still only played around 20 snaps. It was Lil Jordan Humphrey who really kind of took over that top role in the Patriots offense alongside Devontae Parker. And the Patriots like Lil Jordan Humphrey because he can block. It's not like he's out there catching 10 passes a game. So one thing is that, I mean, Kendrick Bourne is signed through next season, so he has a very good contract for the Patriots. He's a very affordable wide receiver, but this season certainly could get away from the Patriots now that Mac Jones is injured, and he's not getting a ton of playing time, so he is a player that I would expect to be pretty valuable to another team in the NFL, given his contract situation. given what he's done throughout his career. Let's talk about a piece that I wrote real quick, and that's a rumor roundup piece. We talked about Kenny Golladay a little bit on Monday, but I think that we've both kind of collected a little bit more information about this scenario. If Kenny Golladay is traded, this is the most important sticking point to me on this. If Kenny Golladay is traded, and even if the Giants bring his base salary all the way down to the league minimum through a signing bonus, the acquiring team for Kenny Golladay would still have to pay him a $4.5 million signing bonus next year. So the minimum that you would pay Kenny Golladay for 1 year of play would be $5 million. The minimum that you would pay him for 2 years of play, assuming he doesn't want to reduce next year's salary, is $18 million. I'm still hearing it's a possibility that some team could still want to trade for Kenny Golladay, but I mean, he can't find the field on the Giants with Richie James and David Sills getting snaps over him. I have a hard time believing that a team will want to pay him $5 million by acquiring him now or even at midway through the season.
Yeah, what I heard was the pool is small of potential teams, and that, you mentioned the sticking point may not even be this year, because I'm sure New York would be willing to maneuver the contract. His salary this year is fully guaranteed anyway, so them eating the majority of it is kind of, worth it to them to potentially get some draft picks and just kind of get him off the roster. Maybe Sterling Shepard, though, tore his ACL in the last play of the game. That injury maybe, gets more opportunity for Kenny Golladay, and they keep him around to play. But Wan'Dale Robinson, their second-round rookie, has not played since week 1. Kadarius Toney, of course, did not play this past week. Their first-rounder from last year. So they have depth there. They have options. I think, like you said, it's more about another team willing to commit to a decent amount of money for 2023, and I'm not sure a lot of teams are super interested in doing that.
Yeah, and Darius Slayton not getting a lot of snaps as well. He was mentioned in your trade candidates piece as well. So, and even with Sterling Shepard down, you might assume, okay, Sterling Shepard's out for the season. Now they need Kenny Golladay. I'm not sure if that's necessarily the case because of the guys that we mentioned who have been playing above him, David Sills and Richie James. As you mentioned, you get Wan'Dale Robinson back. He looked like he was going to be the Giants' top wide receiver this year until he got hurt in week 1. Kadarius Toney, we're not really sure what the plan is there. And I mean, they intentionally brought back Darius Slayton on a reduced salary. I think he's only played 18 snaps this season, so it hasn't done him very well as far as playing time goes, but maybe at some point he could get back in the mix as well. A couple of things I wrote this week were offensive line related. We'll see what happens with the Cowboys when they get some pieces back, but it does seem like Jason Peters will be sticking at left guard for the foreseeable future. Ravens have been looking at offensive linemen since Patrick McCarry. Seems like he's kind of day-to-day right now with an ankle injury. He was the Ravens' third left tackle. They were down to their fourth one, similar to the Jets with Daniel Falele out there playing, but they signed Zach Johnson, who is a recent undrafted free agent for the Giants and Denver Broncos. But I want to talk about the Patriots quarterback situation a little bit right now. This was one that we talked about on Monday, and I forgot exactly what I said on Monday, but essentially now we're 2 days removed from that. The Patriots are kind of downplaying this Mac Jones injury. I don't know if you saw comments from Bill Belichick today. He said about 30 times that he's day-to-day. Mac Jones, after we got done with that show on Monday, he spoke to the media. He kept saying day-to-day. And I actually asked him, I was like, hey, you keep saying day-to-day. Is there a differentiation between day-to-day and week-to-week? He was saying, I'm trying to get treated and I'm day-to-day. But Bill Belichick saying today that Mac Jones is feeling much better than he was 48 hours ago, that he's day-to-day. It's either they're trying to get Mac Jones to play, they're playing 9 games with the Green Bay Packers, or there's actually a possibility that Mac Jones could play through this ankle sprain.
Yeah, maybe it's all the above. Bill Belichick also told reporters today he is not an orthopedic surgeon, so if anyone was wondering, he probably could be if he put his mind to it. I think there's probably some gamesmanship involved. He also mentioned how they value toughness and want players to play through things. Maybe it is an injury they perceive where you could play through it. I know Michael Thomas last year, or 2 years ago now, I guess, with New Orleans, they didn't think there was a huge risk of re-injury. It's more about pain management and just being able to play through it. Mac Jones is not cutting like Michael Thomas is when he runs a route. So maybe he could get away with it. to a degree. And yeah, I mean, him not going IR would be a big signal, meaning they think he'll be back in less than 4 weeks, all of those things. I also just wonder, neither of us are doctors. I think we're making that clear right now during the segment, but maybe it's just hard to gauge with the swelling and everything going on in his ankle, kind of the severity still, even though we are 48 hours removed. It looked like a nasty injury when it happened during that game.
Oh yeah, I mean there was pictures after the injury of him, trying to get down the stairs, like screaming in agony. He hopped off the field on one foot immediately after the injury. But I mean, like you said, he's a quarterback. He's not a wide receiver. He's not a running back. He's not a cornerback. It seems like if you could play in a high ankle sprain at any position, if you get a toradol shot or whatever it is, it might be at quarterback. That being said, it's kind of ironic that we're talking about Mac Jones' mobility because he probably showed the most mobility of his NFL career on Sunday against the Baltimore Ravens. He was out there scrambling. He was out there maneuvering the pocket. So that alone would really limit him if he did try to play through this high ankle sprain. I'm trying to think of other quarterbacks who have played through high ankle sprains. Did Jimmy Garoppolo at one point play through a high ankle sprain? Can you recall this?
That sounds somewhat familiar. I do know they've dealt with ankle issues. I know
Right.
Drew Brees had an ankle issue a couple of years ago, and he was already kind of the corpse of Drew Brees at that point,
Right.
and just was able to kind of maneuver the pocket and not do much. And look, I know Mac Jones kind of gets called a statue, or his lack of athleticism gets pointed out. He's not that bad of an athlete, but
No.
he doesn't necessarily need it to get done what he usually accomplishes. So maybe it is something that he can overcome, and the Patriots, like you've said, would love to see that from him if he can.
Yeah, for sure. And if it's not Mac Jones, it's going to be Brian Hoyer on Sunday against the Green Bay Packers. It's a CBS 4:00 late afternoon Jim Nantz game, and we might see Brian Hoyer out there. So that clearly would not be ideal. Let's talk a little bit about Monday Night Football, a game that was played right after we recorded our show on Monday, and I think we were both right as far as we were making picks at the end of the day there, and we both said, yeah, we see the Cowboys winning this one. Don't see a way that the Giants win, and that's exactly what happened.
We called that one for sure. I think that the Cowboys' defensive line was just so dominant against that offensive line for the Giants. Rookie Evan Neal had his hands full with DeMarcus Lawrence, who had 6 pressures and 3 sacks in that game. Micah Parsons was still Micah Parsons. I don't think he actually recorded a sack, but, just always – there was a play where he threw a guard into next Tuesday. I mean, he's just so strong and so physical. They are now putting him over guards. On that snap, he was lined up over the guard with Lawrence next to him. And I can't even imagine being the right guard and right tackle, trying to figure out how to deal with potential stunts or, all these different things that they can do with those two guys. So they were just too good, too big, too strong, too fast. CeeDee Lamb had one of the weirdest drops I've ever seen in the first half, but did come back. I want to say he had 8 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown in the second half alone. Look, the other thing, too, is the Cowboys, the Eagles have been so good, and Dak Prescott got hurt that we all just kind of, ended the NFC East in, week 2. They're 2-1, and they're right behind them. Yeah, the Eagles have a super easy schedule. The Giants, or the Cowboys, not that much more difficult. They are way right back in the mix in that division.
They really are, and I would say that I had 2 pretty big takeaways for the Cowboys offense. First of all, Jason Peters looked good at left guard, so that plays into the fact that I think that they'll probably want to keep him there in the future. First of all, Noah Brown has been really impressive to me, replacing a lot of very talented wide receivers in that offense. He is currently the Cowboys' top graded offensive player. He's got a 76.4 offensive grade, a 77.8 receiving grade. He made a really nice leaping catch in that game. I mean, the Cowboys traded away Amari Cooper this offseason. They haven't had Michael Gallup so far. And Noah Brown has really been the guy who's been stepping up there. On the other side of that same coin, I cannot believe that people are having legitimate conversations about there being some sort of quarterback controversy between Dak Prescott and Cooper Rush. I understand that Cooper Rush is now 3-0 in his career. He's 2-0 in the last 2 games. But, what on Dak Prescott's side are we basing this off of? I know he struggled in week 1, but, do we not have, 6 years of his previous career to base this off of? I cannot believe this is happening.
It's just a crazy narrative. I feel like for whatever reason, Dak just can't get enough respect. I'll take a different angle. I'll say this. We all make fun of Mike McCarthy a decent amount, and Kellen Moore, now the offensive coordinator, has gotten some flack as well. They had a great game plan, and I thought they just made some smart plays. They went for a fourth down late in the first half that I thought was commendable. They didn't actually convert, but I thought, good on them for trying. The one thing, though, to go against what my own point now, though, is you go look at the advanced data. They're running a ton of play action with Cooper Rush right now. Mm-hmm. I don't get why teams don't also run the easier stuff with their actual elite quarterback. I want to say Cooper Rush is in the high 20s of percentage dropbacks that are play action. And Dak Prescott the last year and week one was like 10%. It's like, yeah, I get he's better. You want him to be a pocket passer and not, kind of rely on play action or motion just to be able to produce. He's obviously better than that, but still give him that serving of easy dialing things up when he does come back. That I don't understand, but I do think they deserve credit for a great game plan against a decent Giants defense.
Definitely. And they had success, as you mentioned. I mean, CeeDee Lamb had a drop in that game. A few other receivers had some drops. So they were able to play through that, still win. You mentioned the Dolphins-Bengals game coming on Thursday. Let's talk about that a little bit, because there's the whole Tua Tagovailoa situation where, we mentioned on Monday, looked like he had a concussion, wound up being a back or ankle injury. The NFLPA is investigating whether that was actually true or not. But does seem to be a tiny bit of uncertainty whether or not Tua Tagovailoa is actually going to be able to play against the Bengals. Mike McDaniel said that if he can physically play, he will play, but that's essentially going to be determined over the next 24 hours or so. But I mean, this is going to be a fascinating matchup where the Dolphins are playing much better than we expected them to. They're 3-0 on the season. Bengals are playing much worse than we expected them to. They're 1-2 coming into this game. And the Bengals are favored by 4 points.
Yeah, it's a fascinating game for a lot of different storylines. First, Cameron Wolfe of NFL Media said he was at Tua Tagovailoa's presser yesterday, and he walked like a guy that had a back issue. That was his direct quote. He said his status, at least from my perspective, is very much in question. The short turnaround, of course, is difficult. Obviously, like I mentioned at the top of the show, but they also had to get out of Miami, I think, earlier than normal to avoid the hurricane coming in. Right. So that kind of throws off your whole pregame routine, the week of. So all these things are huge factors. You mentioned, I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I know it's a Thursday. We've gotten some boring games in that situation, but Xavier Howard, the corner of Miami, is not 100%. The Bengals lost DJ Reader, our second highest-graded interior defender on the season so far. I think these teams are going to put up a lot of points with some injured and tired defenses. Miami played 92 snaps against Josh Allen in that Miami Heat last week in a very, impassioned AFC East battle. Obviously, Tua's health would help, but Teddy Bridgewater is a very good backup quarterback. Over 47 in that game on tomorrow night.
Actually, I like the over 47 as well. That's what I was looking at. As far as the actual game goes, I would probably take the Bengals. They're favored by 4. The health of Tua is what frightens me a little bit. And I will say, to the point about taking the over in this game, Dolphins offense has been fantastic this season. They've relied a lot on big plays, but their offense has been great. Their defense has been lacking a little bit. And as we've mentioned, Byron Jones is still on the PUP list. Xavier Howard banged up. They haven't been getting a ton out of their linebackers at this point. They've got a decent amount of pass rushers, but yeah, I'd say that this could be a nice bounce back game for the Bengals offense. And I certainly would not be surprised if we were looking up on Thursday and this was like a 38 to 31 game, or what would it have to be? It would be, I think that this is going to be a pretty high scoring affair.
Yeah, I think we see it the same way. As for the spread, it opened Cincinnati minus just 1.5 and has now crossed the key number of 3 and up to 4, which I understand. I'm sure, Vegas was looking to pull action in that direction, and obviously the injury reports as well. Also, just a random aside, the Dolphins and Tyreek Hill in particular keep talking a lot of smack, but they're backing up with their play so far. So Tua Tagovailoa said, I think yesterday, unless I'm getting caught by a fake graphic right now, which is entirely possible, that if he sees Tyreek lined up against Eli Apple on the Bengals, he's gonna throw it to him. Which they're talking smack coming into the game. I respect it. Hopefully that's not a fake quote, but I think these offenses are going to be pushing the ball down the field, and the defenses are just not as good as we expected coming into the year.
In some ways, obviously, I hope that Tua Tagovailoa is healthy. Obviously, I hope he plays for his sake. I do think it would be a little bit fascinating to see what Teddy Bridgewater actually looked like in this Dolphins offense. and to see how much different it would actually look with him at quarterback. That being said, with the indecision about which quarterback is going to play in this game, it being a short week, I don't know if it would be the best test to see what a different quarterback would look like in this Mike McDaniel offense with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and everything like that. But I don't know. I think that would be kind of a fascinating case study to see a different quarterback in this offense.
100%. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater's never had Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Mike McDaniel. Talk about hitting all the easy buttons. They're first in play action, first in motion, just doing all the things to make it easier on your quarterback. It would be a very, very interesting situation if Teddy looks just as good.
Let's talk about some injuries. Obviously, we don't know a lot about these because it's only Wednesday. Friday is usually our big injury show when Brad doesn't have a wedding to go to and a bunch of friends to hang out with and ditches me and leaves me with Nathan Yonke and Sam Monson. But I'll get over that at some point. But we've talked about Mac Jones. We'll see what happens there. Michael Gallup for the Cowboys. We were talking about their wide receiver situation earlier. Seems like this could finally be the week that we say Michael Gallup at wide receiver. And that would certainly help Cooper Rush or the off chance that Dak Prescott's able to come back. But I mean, now with Noah Brown performing the way that he is, that would be a very solid three-headed monster there at wide receiver with CeeDee Lamb, Noah Brown, and Michael Gallup.
Yeah, no question about it. If the tight end Dalton Schultz did not play against the Giants either, but if he could come back, it's a solid group. And then you have Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard, who are both capable of catching the football and making plays in space. So as much talent as they did lose, they obviously knew they had some guys in place as well. And I would say this is why when you talk about best player available, CeeDee Lamb, like the Cowboys taking him in that draft, if you remember, no one thought it was going to happen. No one thought he was going to be there for that pick. The Cowboys had all this talent, and they said, well, he's too good to pass up. This is why you do it. You can kind of reshuffle your roster, save some money, spend elsewhere. I think you said Dak Prescott got his pins out of his thumb, I think, yesterday. Could play this week. Sounds more likely week 5 is when he returns.
And, going back to that Dak Cooper Rush conversation, comments from Jerry Jones have not helped that. He said that he would encourage a quarterback competition. He just keeps giving credence to this. It's like, dude, just stop. Just you have your quarterback. Just be happy with him. You don't need another Tony Romo situation. You don't need another Dak Prescott situation. Just be happy with who you have. The Saints and Vikings are playing in London this week. So just as a reminder, there's that 9:30 a.m. game this week. We'll all be watching football from 9:30 a.m. all the way until 11:30 p.m. But definitely some injuries to watch in that one. Jameis Winston sounds like he'll probably play, but he wasn't at practice today. Same goes for Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas. So Saints lost to the Carolina Panthers last week. They could certainly use a bounce back win this week in a tough match against the Minnesota Vikings. And it doesn't help that Jameis and their top 2 wide receivers, or, maybe you throw Chris Olave in there as well, but 2 of their top 3 wide receivers are now banged up right now.
No, definitely does not help. And Jameis also, he has a 12-yard average depth of target. It is by far the top mark in the NFL. Olave is kind of the deep threat. Obviously, he's more dynamic than that, but you need some of these underneath playmakers to be able to make plays. I think Alvin Kamara's lack of receptions is also a part of that. He's so good at making guys miss in open space and has been a top 10 graded receiver as a running back the last 3 years in a row before this season. So, yeah, I mean, the Carolina game, it was because they were trying to get shots off, but Brian Burns was getting in the backfield. Derek Brown was kind of penetrating the interior as well. So if they can't have the non-chunk plays, the stay ahead of the sticks, kind of smaller plays, it throws off their entire offense. The injuries are certainly not helping in that regard whatsoever.
For sure. Some other injuries around the NFL. So it seems like the Bills are going to be able to get some defensive backs back. They might get Dane Jackson and Jordan Poyer. Browns are monitoring the Myles Garrett situation. That was certainly scary. He was in a one-car accident. We'll see if he'll be able to play against the Atlanta Falcons. But the Detroit Lions are one of the top offenses in the NFL this season. They've started the year 1-2. They've been in some close games. They haven't worked out for them. But they have the ability to have a bounce-back game this week against the Seahawks. But DeAndre Swift and Amon-Ra St. Brown were not practicing on Wednesday. I think that Dan Campbell kind of gave it away that DeAndre Swift might be out for a few weeks, but Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and he's kind of what is powering that Detroit Lions offense right now with Jameson Williams still on NFI, and they've got some other pieces on that offense, but it's very important to have Amon-Ra St. Brown out there.
No question about it. The Lions have 12 offensive touchdowns on the season. That's tops in the NFL, tied with Lamar Jackson by himself.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
and then it's the rest of the NFL. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, he snapped his streak of at least 8 catches and or a touchdown. I want to say it was an 8 or 9 game streak itself. He finally snapped it last week. He had 6 catches and a scoreless 63 yards, I believe it was. He has been the powering this offense. I think he would go absolutely berserk against this weak Seahawks defense that does not have a good pass rush and is, like we talked about, is playing a bunch of young cornerbacks that are learning on the job. If he can't go, it's a big loss. DJ Chark has been okay. Josh Reynolds, they have other guys there, but without Jameson Williams, their rookie still recovering from that injury. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a big loss for this offense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they are fortunate that Josh Reynolds has performed better in Detroit than he had near the end there with the Los Angeles Rams. And DJ Chark, I mean, I heard good things about him during training camp and preseason, but he hasn't really fully lived up to that at this point. But yeah, being without DeAndre Swift and without Amon-Ra St. Brown, maybe you can still beat the Seahawks. But and the Seahawks have not been impressive over the last couple of weeks, but that's the same team that beat the Denver Broncos pretty handily in week 1. So certainly still an intriguing matchup there. Any other injuries before we go that you are closely monitoring, at least early this week?
Yeah, I think it's just an interesting situation in Chicago with 2 receivers. So first, Byron Pringle, their free agent addition, was placed on injured reserve yesterday. On the flip side, their rookie 3rd rounder, Velus Jones, has been nursing a hamstring since mid-training camp. It sounds like he's really close. It sounds like he could play this week. They're hopeful he plays this week. And that would be a big debut because they need any help they can get in terms of pass catchers.
Giants-Bears, by the way, is the funniest matchup between 2-1 teams of all time. The fact that, I mean, we talked about this with the Giants and Cowboys last week, but the fact that either the Bears or the Giants are going to be 3-1 after this week is just absolutely preposterous. So we'll see what winds up happening there. Games in New York. Will you be there?
I wish. Oh, maybe I'll see if I can pull something. I'll pull some strings. I'll hit up my people that know some people that know some people.
There we go. All right. Well, we will be back on Friday with a bunch of injury news, everything else that has happened throughout the week. We'll see how we wind up doing with what we're predicting will happen on Thursday, but keep it on PFF.com for all of your news and analysis. Download the PFF app. Subscribe to PFF Plus. That is $79.99 a year. Follow Brad on Twitter at PFF_Brad. Throw me a follow at Doug Kyed. And don't forget to subscribe to the PFF Wire podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Put it in a review. Do all of that good stuff. And we will be back with you guys again on Friday.